But
Started in 3, 2,
you got to play the music.
1, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to have a little show before in Grenada at the Trade Center with Bido. Every Saturday, innit?
Sports vibes.
Sports vibes, yeah. Because you see now, Sport Max is in trouble. Yeah, Sports Max is gone.
Yeah. How's that?
God knows. Wages, I don't know. They were trying to run as a massive TV station. All good?
Running. You're live, man.
Welcome to the Total Football Show, Grenada. My name is Marcus Trevor Mc Intosh, and we're here today with a very, very good friend of mine who's from Grenada called Glen Alexander, who is a stalwart within football in Grenada. But we have not been able to bring the show. We started off a year ago, but as you all know that within that time, a hurricane passed through Carriacou, and literally 90% of the island was absolutely destroyed. So today is our first show back from the hurricane disaster that we've had in Carriacou to talk all about football. So hopefully today we can give you a clearer insight into football in Grenada and the views of what you think football in Grenada should be like. And today we've got Glen Alexander with us. Well, like to welcome you to the Total Football Show, Glen.
Thank you, Mike. And I'm totally happy to be here.
Thank you so much for taking up the challenge of discussing life and football in Grenada. So how did it start for you?
The issue of football, how it started for me?
Yes.
It started way back from my primary school upbringing.
Yeah.
Everyone would know Palmer School, J.W. Fletcher St. George's, RC Boys. You have had that name, and you would know that school have had many national players coming from that institution. As a matter of fact, St. George's RC Boys, we had a tradition of winning both the St. George's Lega National Primary School Football Championship.
Right. So within that period of time, what type of what names would have come out of your school?
Well, we had St. George's RC Boys, and
Yeah.
those who know of the history of the school will know that at one time the St. George's Government School was relocated. The upper grades 6 and 7, they were placed into St. George's RC Boys. So that brought about the name change of the school. That's where J.W. Fletcher comes from. And then the present Wesley College, that's where the present Wesley College is now. That is where they were transferred. So Wesley College moved from Wesley Hall over to St. George's, St. George's Government School.
Right.
And as a result of, because St. George's RC Boys, as the name suggests, is only a boys' school. And with the girls coming over, there was a name change to J.W. Fletcher RC School.
Right. I remember meeting you there once.
Yes.
On several occasions. And I remember coming from Australia to be the TD, and you were one of the first people that actually came and congratulated me when I arrived, you know.
So I think you had coming into as the general sec, and based on what I know, I think
as a TD.
I must commend you.
Yeah.
In terms of what was needed, in terms of structure, in terms of plans, what were the future plans. I know from time to time you would have shared such with me, and it's a pity some of the thoughts and plans that you have had did not materialize.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, in your point of view now, how would you describe football in Grenada over the years, and where do you actually think it should have been, it should be at present?
Well, I was still to the politics of football and,
Yes.
and say straight up that
Yes.
I think more or less we sort of regress
Right.
because the issue of grassroots, the issue of club structure, and so in my view, I thought we'd have been much further on.
Mm-hmm.
While yes, there might be the support financially, but structure-wise, throughout, that has been an issue. And speaking from my club, Combined Northerners, I know structure is something that we can feel proud about in the sense that we actually have a structure, we have an executive running,
Yeah.
we have a treasurer managing the finances. Like in every other organization and like in every other club, you will have issues, but I always say that football is not a group of fellas going and kick a ball.
Right.
Football involves a proper club structure. Football involves fan base. Football involves reaching community in different ways besides football.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, not that I stand corrected, but I can say point blank based on what I see. In some instances, we having a group of guys who just going to kick a ball.
Right. So you say that whereas before, many years ago, when it's, I remember when Grenada was at the top,
Yes.
and we didn't have all the money coming in at from FIFA for our programs. How did you guys manage to have coached young footballers in Grenada to have got to that level?
Well, besides having raw talent and harnessing
Yeah.
raw talent, because anybody who knows St. George Northeast,
Yeah.
we have lots of talent that have come from the area, and as a matter of fact, our present intercollegiate champion comes from the Northeast. That's the Boca Secondary School. So in the Northeast, we continue to have that talent that we can harness. Additionally, we had the support of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Fundraisers were very successful.
Yeah.
The sponsors were willing to put out.
Right.
And one name we could never stop calling is Mr. Martin Bido, who is from Carriacou,
Yeah.
in a sense. And you would know that name goes simultaneously with sponsorship in sports in general. So that has worked well for us, alongside the attitude and the will of others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back then we have had some coaches. I cannot forget Bombo Nelson. You train, you play, you do not train, you do not play.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that more or less encouraged us to turn out to training because you wanted to train. And as a matter of fact, the training we had, we didn't have a choice. That training we had, the amount of times that we would run up the Dow Hills, the amount of times you would have beach training, you do not dare try to miss one of these training. And I can say back then, Combined Northerners had one of the fittest outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Fittest in the sense that we actually trained. And you know, once you train, you can learn any skill.
Mm-hmm.
So that fitness would have worked for my club, Combined Northerners. I know when we first came on the scene in 1989,
Wow.
we moved straight from a second division, next season first division, the next season Premier League. So we had that talent, and people remember making reference to the team because we were all yellow. We were called Saffron United.
Right. So, who were the big clubs back in those days?
Well, of course, the Queensburg Rangers, and one team that came out with us, Latas.
Right.
They were out, and then you have R.A. Walker International. That was a team also that came out. Not forgetting the likes of Hundred, and I must say that a lot of our initial players for Combined Northerners actually came from Hundred.
Right.
Because and we saw the need to organize Combined Northerners because there was not an organized structure in the Northeast. But we were saying, hey, there's so many players, and as a matter of fact, our team can boast of having players from every major community in the Northeast, as opposed to, let's say, the Tempe All Blacks and Willis Youth, who had their players, a nucleus of players from the particular area. But as the name suggests, Combined Northerners, we had the opportunity to bring the Northeast together in that light. So Hornville was one of the clubs that we admired, but we had to, our players were willing to come over. Fontenoy, as a matter of fact, some of the said clubs, they are still there today. They might not have been functioning as they did before, but I think some of the newer outfits and generally in Grenada, you have club life and a club with structure is not there.
Great. So you would say that that's where we're regressing
We need to improve
in structure.
I know for a fact that yes, things has changed considerably, but at the same time, if you're not able to bring a community together,
Mm-hmm.
based on the structure, you have U15, U19, and senior teams. Based on structures, sometimes you find teams having issues in fulfilling one of these areas.
Mhm.
Well, I know Combined Northerners for this year, we had some issues with U15, but structure-wise, once the club is able to fill U15, U19, it serves as a feeder for each of the different categories, each of the different division that exists, and allows you to broaden your base in terms of participation of football on island.
Right. Because I was just recently reading somewhere that in St. George's alone, someone's correct me, that there's about 20 odd teams.
Oh yes, and that is correct. You have Caranas, you have Springs, the list goes on. So every little village
Yeah.
will have a team, but sometimes it might just be good to harmonize and work together so you get the best. So the more you tear up, let's say a bread, is less bread you have.
Yeah.
So you bring it together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can take a page from the financial industry where many of the smaller credit unions came together and gave you the powerful ones
Yeah.
that exist now. So GUT changed, I'm not advertising for Nexa here,
Mm-hmm.
but it's now, it was GUT as in Grenada Union of Teachers.
Yeah.
But now all of the smaller credit unions came together to form what you call Nexa, to make you a force to be reckoned with. So in some cases, based on the area, while yes, you want your area to be on the map, but what it takes to be there, sometimes it's just better you come together as opposed to trying to force it.
Right. So if you say right now there's, in one area particularly in the north, you've got Happy Hill. What else you got around there? You've got Fontenoy.
But
You've now got Bulldogs. You've got a whole load of clubs competing for a certain handful of players.
yes.
Would it be wise for two of the clubs to join together?
Well, it would be wise in terms of harmonizing to be a force to be reckoned
Yeah.
with. I wouldn't call names because I'm mindful, but
Yeah.
let's look at the Northeast in particular. You have
Yeah.
some clubs who you play one season and then the other season you do not play. You play one competition and then you can't play another competition.
Right.
That don't make sense.
No, that's not development of growth.
Right. So this is what I'm alluding to. So I'm very mindful in terms of calling names.
Mhm.
When we look around, there are teams that it may want the salt to harmonize. Where is the GBSS? We barely hear about carnage,
Mhm.
right? And I say I wouldn't call names, but these two jump out of my head. And
Yeah.
an organization as GBSS, um, they have not played, I stand corrected, in any competition.
So why is that? Because
Under GBSS.
a school like GBSS should be having a. But okay, I went to a school in London called Henry Compton School. Once you've left the school, you then went on to play for Henry Compton Old Boys.
Yes.
So what happened?
So it's not in my take to,
Yeah,
and I do not.
because when I got there, I remember that GBSS having a very strong team
Yes. So
competing.
I'm not sure where the disconnection is.
Yeah,
But this is one that stood out in my
Right.
mind based on what I am saying.
Yeah.
And you know, GBSS is no short of players.
no,
In any way. So the question is, what is the disconnect?
yeah,
What is the disconnection? And with an organized structure, as I'm alluding to, because you go through the system, they do well for the secondary competition. And basically, as I mean, back then I was a PBC
Mhm.
boy, and we played for PBC,
hmm
and my initials in Northerners.
yeah,
So you would know that playing at the highest level at the secondary school, it gives you your first stint
hmm
at a club structure.
right,
But to me, I am not sure where that disconnection is.
hmm
But it's something that I'm sort of baffled about as to why there is no. I do not know as
Mhm.
to why there is no club GBSS.
yeah, because it used to had a lot of more competition to the league.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, you've seen certain teams that were so prominent within the Premier League in Grenada, just disappear.
Yes.
You know. Excuse me. And we would like for those teams to come back, but it's how you rebuild and how you say restructure
Yes.
that club.
And it's even more harder now than before
Yeah.
when you have a particular structure. So, for example, in the case of GBSS, let me just stick to the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
As in the case of Boca being the champion, we would think immediately that as a result of that, a lot of the students from Boca
Mm-hmm.
would be fed into the clubs in the Northeast. But in some cases, we do not have that.
Why is that?
We have to compete with, and I know for a fact with Northerners, we have lost players who come from Boca School and have been summoned to the Rangers outfit, right? Behind the scenes,
But is that because they're in the Premier League,
well,
or is that because they are also restructuring?
there are many reasons why this occurs.
Mm-hmm.
If you look on the flip side, maybe we can say, as in Northerners' case, structure, yes, we have structure in terms of playing, etc. But one of the things is that students are forced to play for Rangers, maybe based on the teacher, based
Right.
on the coach,
Oh, okay.
having closer
Affiliation.
ties,
Yeah.
affiliation,
Yeah.
right? So I'm very mindful of that, and I'm aware of that. So
Yeah.
like it be as it may, while we would love that, sometimes you do not always get that.
Mm. So,
And in the case of GBS,
yeah.
a lot of the players from the school, they come from different communities.
Right.
So they've been faced with the school versus community, loyalty, and all of the likes.
Mm. Yeah, it makes an interesting makes it quite interesting of where you spread your loyalty to.
Yes.
And you think, for instance, now St. George's having all of these clubs, but there's one club in particular, especially in the Premier League,
Yes.
that's running away with the Premier League every year.
Yes.
So what does that tell you of what this certain club is doing correctly in order to be running away with the league every year, which is Paradise International FC?
Yes. And sadly, though, I know.
And how can the clubs in St. George's swing it back
Well,
to the capital?
The issue is win at all costs.
Yes.
Win at all costs. So whether you are attractive enough to pay, maybe to buy a boots for a player,
Yeah.
to pay for something. And I know good players who have played for my club. They were attracted by another club,
Mm-hmm.
and in that attraction, because that club would be trying to attract a lot of players,
Mm-hmm.
and in attracting so many players, sometimes there's no use for you. So you might be a very good player on a first division team.
Yeah.
That Premier League club saw you and did everything to try to get you. And when you go there, sometimes you don't get played. Sometimes you're being underused, and then you become discouraged, and then you find the coming back may not be something that they want to, and they just fall by the wayside.
Right.
So,
So-
all of these factors that one can look at and pray that wisdom will prevail, because you say and you build your second or first division club.
Yeah.
It goes a long way because you journey, and not like the instant quick fix where you want to run up to Premier Division because you want to be on that winning team.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it's not something that you really want.
Right. Because even in professional clubs, some of them have about 30-odd players.
Yes.
But it depends within that system what you do with your 30-odd players.
Yes.
I don't know if there's a way that we could derive a system where if you have so many players, if you can loan them out
Well,
to other clubs
I think that system
so
is
that everybody can be playing.
I think that system is there, especially with the Connect. That system is there, but I do not think in our region,
Yeah.
our structure, that we understand what can happen as a result of that.
Yeah.
Because the thought is win at all costs. So once I'm on the winning team, it doesn't matter whether I get play or not. I'm on the winning team. So win at all costs. You're not looking to see where you can build yourself to ensure
Right.
that we appreciate things when we build it,
Yeah.
more than when it's just handed over to
Right.
us.
So you're saying to me that there could be a player sitting in a club that will never see a game. Will never, sorry, not see a game, but will never ever be able to kick a ball in a game.
Maybe to kick it back on the field when it come out.
Right. So then we need to find a way of getting that player
Yeah.
games, even if he has to go in Division 1 or 2.
Right, so the structure is there, but remember what I'm saying, win at all costs. So you want to be on the winning team, and you're just there.
So you're telling me that there's young footballers in Grenada who prefer to just sit there
on the winning team
on the winning team and not wanting to
not
play.
contribute. Not contribute. When you would have left a team where you would start in, where you're seen as a star for that team,
Mhm.
but because you want to be on the winning team, you find that. And that is very common around.
Wow.
It place.
That's very sad.
It is sad.
Very sad, because you should be wanting to play.
Oh yes, oh yes. And back then, we had many more so-called bush league.
Yeah,
We used to have the Tantine football with Mr. Bear. I still see Mr. Bear around.
yeah,
Mr. Bear used to organize lots of competition at all levels. So
Right.
that was a competition that ran on the off season from what GFA offers.
Right.
And many teams played. Even if they played for different teams, there were many teams.
So those
playing
players,
in that time
right,
team.
so those players would eventually get a game.
Yes.
Okay.
There were morning competitions and so forth. You had, back then there were many competition
Mhm.
activities, games to be played with football.
So what you're actually telling me now, that has dropped off?
I'm not seeing it, or maybe I'm not feeling it because I'm not really gone to look at many games because again, very often
Yeah,
there are issues with lack of officials, fields not prepared, and at this stage in my life, I am not willing to put myself through this to
right.
see a game, right? So, in my view, and
So are you saying, in a way, like the passion has died, is dying
well,
within football?
well, let's say I won't say passion is dying. I still love the
Mhm.
game. Yeah, if I had to look at an international game, etc., I
Yeah.
will. But at the same time, at the stage in my life at this time,
Hmm.
the energies I was willing to put out,
Yeah,
I am not willing or able in some instances
it's,
to put out that energy. Financial wise,
yeah.
time wise, time is precious.
Mm.
You don't want to rush to see a game.
But that's sad, because
when
7
you-
years ago,
Yeah.
I used to always see the passion in you,
Yes.
and the drive. And,
it's still there. Let me just say that I do a lot administratively
Yeah,
for the club,
yeah,
but I'm being a bit selfish now
Mhm.
for me, so that I can enjoy nature, enjoy life.
Yeah.
Not that I was not enjoying life before, but at this stage, I'm looking more at me.
right,
And I put the same amount of energy out in terms of
Yeah.
administrative.
in giving back.
Whether it's letters, whether it's, when you have fundraisers,
Yeah,
I'm the first or maybe the last man on the ground for all of these. But as it relates to going to games and looking at games,
Mhm.
I am more or less fed up as to when there's a game, all the dots are not dotted and the T's are not crossed in some instances. So that is an area,
Yeah.
if I can speak to that, where I believe that we as in football and family needs to
because
improve.
what I see by my outlook on what I've seen so far, by going to some of the games, we really need to get our officials sorted out properly,
Yes.
administration-wise. The clubs need to be more structured in such a way that within their administration, within their club, so that when you get to games, it's not just one person doing the work.
Oh yes.
Everyone need to be having their delegated in what their jobs and their roles are, because that's how you run a football club. So instead of Glen coming there, who's washed the kit, has to hang up the kit, who then has to go and make sure the water bottles are down, who has to make sure that, and he's also the team manager, he's also the team head coach. These are the structures that we need to get in place.
Yes.
Even when it comes to training nights, there's only 2 people doing the training, when we should have a body of delegated people that are going to do that. But yet again, we need to bring our standards up
Right.
to a certain level in order for football within your community to develop.
Right. And I would agree. I would agree, hands down, with this. Like I'm saying to you, at this stage, my energy level
Yeah.
is focus on me.
Yeah, I could see why you're. I could. I could see why you're drained. I could see why. You know, because I go and watch other teams, and they're going through the same issue.
Yes.
You know, where we have the passion and the drive, but we need to put the work in.
Yes.
You know, that's what we need.
And I must say that football, I've been in football for
Yeah.
a lot of years.
Yeah,
Way back, if I go back to St. George's RSC Boys, where we used to bring, in order to get a uniform,
yeah,
we were asked to bring a white T-shirt,
right.
and it was placed in a pot of dye.
Yeah,
That was one of my first football
wow.
uniform. We had what you call tiny mag football,
Okay.
and that is when teachers and students used to be quarreling
Right.
over games. So the tiny mag, the younger ones, the kindergarten and so,
Yeah,
you played football in front of the school, and the entire school is there looking
look
at
at
you.
that was one of the things I tried to encourage
Yes.
when I was the technical director, because there is where the birth of football begins.
Yes.
And that is where you are going to find
Yes.
that kid who would probably later on, when he gets to about 14, 15, that is going to go outside and produce. Because we are yet to produce the first person from Grenada
Yes.
to participate in any of the top leagues in Europe.
Yes. Yes.
Because no offense, you know, we're putting on grassroots programs, but how much, like now that GFA is putting on a summer program, but how do we identify those young talent?
Yeah, it's showboat. I was going back to the structure, a nice structure that St. George's RSC school had. As a matter of fact, I spoke of tiny mags, but we had Division 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So everybody in the school had the opportunity to play football.
Yeah.
And the opening ceremony was a sight to see,
Yeah.
when the teachers would take on the school team.
Yeah.
I know, being a student at the school, while I was not talented enough to make the senior team,
Yeah.
but I got the opportunity to play as a teacher because I went back to that school
Yeah.
as a teacher, and it is always a good sight to see the teachers playing the boys in the opening session of the competition.
That's what we did in my school in England.
Yeah,
So you were always eager to play against the school teacher. The school teacher that's always going to be disciplining you in your class. You was easy. You always ready to get them on the field to get one over on them. You know. You know. But at this session, we'll take a little break, and we'll come back to you again, Glenn, and then we'll encourage. I'll make a few phone calls to a few people and get their views on what they think about football in Grenada. We're having a problem. There's an error on the link. So welcome back to the Total Football Show Grenada, where we were just discussing with Glen Alexander about his experience within football in Grenada and where he thinks the levels have dropped off or where they should be improved. I've got a friend that will be online soon that he has his views on where football should also be in Grenada. I'll just give him a call so he can get involved within the conversation with us. Let's see if he's there. See if we can get hold of him. Good afternoon.
Yo, what's happening?
Good day, Mr. Patterson, and how are you? You're
Yeah, not too bad. So,
you're on the Total Football Show. Could you hear us live?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic, mate. You just, well, not just, have taken over the reins of restructuring Queen's Park Rangers Football Club. In the studio with me is Glen Alexander, who's been at Combine Northerners for all these years, but he has taken a relevant step back, but he's still actively involved in the club, but doing all their administrative stuff. And straight away, that kind of reminded me of your role within
Right.
the setup of Queen's Park Rangers. So, you know, there have been, what, I stand correct again, about the amount of clubs that we have in St. George's. How do you go about restructuring your club in order for you to get players? And you did quite well. Was it last season or the year before where you finished second or third?
Yeah, the year before last was second
Yeah.
place. Last year was fourth place.
Right.
Basically, I mean, I think it's because of the commitment the staff has to the players, and that's the commitment on all levels. So the grassroots programs that are associated with Queen's Park Rangers, they run very consistently on a Saturday morning in Queen's Park and in Tempe. And then we have, one of the stronger women's programs on the island. And then, from under 15 all the way up to the Premier League with Queen's Park Rangers on the male side, we've been, very successful prior to me coming back to Queen's Park Rangers. And it just seems to be flourishing now and relatively successful with the people that we have in place right now. Our coaches are committed to the players and their development, and everybody's really trying to get Queen's Park Rangers back to where they were years ago.
And so what assistance do you get from the Grenada Football Association with all these activities that you're doing around the club in your grassroots and your female team and your senior men's?
Well, in truth and in fact, we do get something. Once you are, again, Glenn can attest to this, once your administration is in order, and your books are in order in terms of tracking your expenses, you qualify for the subvention program.
Yeah.
They think this year they're up to $10. Doesn't really do much. I mean, I'm not complaining. We're thankful for the $10,000, but when it cost us $600 for one bus trip to St. Patrick's, the Premier League team to play, you can see how quickly that 10,000 disappears.
Wow.
And because we have so many different programs, we're one of the few clubs that actively participates in every competition at every level. So, there's an expense associated with each one of those age groups competing.
Right. So are you saying that $10,000 that you get, that goes to your senior team, your girls team, your under 17s and your under 15s and your grassroots program to run?
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
So between refreshments, bus transportation where applicable, hopefully there's no need for any medical expense. There's also uniforms, equipment. We're running when you're thinking about a program like ours, where on any given day, regardless of the team that's in training, there's 20 plus kids. Each kid needs to have a ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you have five different age groups, that's 100 balls right there. We don't have 100 balls. So, you know, you're always playing catch up. You're trying to police and act like a bit of a ball Nazi, making sure you're not losing balls, balls aren't getting taken or badly treated. And again, you can't get away from not buying good quality because it's not going to last. So you need to spend money on, decent product.
So are you saying that really, in order for your club to develop, is there that you now have a need to now go out and look for sponsorship for your club
Yeah,
separately?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think anybody that's participating in the Premier League should be looking to have some sort of sponsorship outside of the assistance that the FA tries to provide.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing what they want you to do, that means you're actively participating in every age group, right? Um, and so what we do is we take the money that we get and we, make that money stretch.
Right.
Thankfully, we were able to bring Courts Ready Fast Cash on board last year. They came on late in the year, but it was a big boost to us because Rangers hasn't had a corporate sponsor in quite some time, and a decent corporate sponsor.
Yeah.
Prior to me coming back, they've had people get involved, but it was really a joke when I saw the amount of money that they were putting in, getting a title sponsor role, but really not paying anything close to what they should be paying for the mileage that they get.
Yeah. But it's a start.
Yeah, it is. It is a start. Again, when you have a good product on the field and the culture around your club is very positive, then you're more inclined to get corporate Grenada to jump on board. So there's been a lot of damage control done, and I think that's all of those things have worked together to get us to where we are right now.
Yeah. Because I've got with me Glen Alexander in the studio with me, and he was actually ushering the same things. But Glen, what do you guys actually do for a corporate sponsor for your club?
Well, we have Grenada Trade Center.
Yeah.
Mr. Bedo has mentioned, who has been with us through thick and thin. And as was mentioned, you know that he is involved in many other organizations, schools, club, etc., in many other ways. So as club, we in recent times have tried to raise funds.
Mm-hmm.
The last being a hash that we had, but part of that proceeding went off to a fire victim, etc.
Right.
But from time to time, we do little fundraisers, but again, it is not enough. And as I listened to Andre there, I remember, and I also want to say that Rangers was instrumental in helping Northerners way back with Rado,
Mm-hmm.
and also to Coach Bombo Nelson. They came from the Rangers outfit. So, and as Andre spoke, it just dawned on me how the history of Rangers have been so thick and thin, and it is a page that many clubs can learn from. We speak of the grassroots, and as he has mentioned, in every area, in every facet of football that has been offered in Grenada, the club participates. So I'm surprised to know that what I would say that mega $10,000 to work for all of these programs, but I think maybe the FA in additional support, it should look at what the club offers to football, and,
Yeah.
and definitely whether it's doubling or tripling the effort, because again, as was mentioned, Northerners had a few players who went on to play on a national level, but
Right.
when you look at Rangers history,
Mm-hmm.
we can know the likes of what that club has contributed to Ireland. So that trickle of support that is there may be something that needs revisiting. And as he rightfully said, corporate sponsor will usually cling to winners and structures and so forth. And again, they have it going for them, but not too
Yeah.
far behind. Not in us, we try in most instances to
Yeah.
survive with what is given to us.
Because most times I come to Grenada on a weekend, there'll always be a club training in Grenada,
Yes,
in on the field there,
yes,
and they would have a certain amount of young children running around, and from what I see, they've been doing very well.
yes.
But it's how do they now go to the next level, and the next level is attracting corporate sponsors.
Right.
And how do we go to attract corporate sponsors to give them the value of why they're sponsoring your club? And these are the things that, we should get more advised on
Yeah.
how we can attract sponsors. Because when we look at it realistically, your Premier League don't even have a corporate sponsor.
Agreed.
So we've got to look at things like how does the FA itself go around getting a corporate sponsor for the league that will lighten their burden,
Correct.
which is it is something that I've seen since I've been living in Grenada, because people may say, oh, there's tens of thousands of people living in other big countries. But if you sell your product right, you'll be able to get a corporate sponsor that will help with the load of what is need to be done. But clubs in Grenada need to go out there and look for that sponsor. But we all know, yes, Grenada's a small place, and there's only quite a number of big corporate companies that have money. But yet still, there's other ways of attracting sponsorship.
Yeah, but I just want to say that time,
Mm-hmm.
well, we might say times are hard, but what do you do? What can you do to attract me to spend my hard-earned money on you?
Yeah.
Because besides a few clubs, and I know Northerners is one of the clubs that is guilty of that
Mm-hmm.
in terms of players training and all of the likes, you have to be able to sell yourself to attract sponsors.
Yeah.
So we're saying that we might say that there are no sponsors out there, but by your labor you shall bear fruits.
Yeah.
And in some clubs and so, and as Andre spoke, I mean, they are usually training. As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, some of Northerners players and other club players, I believe, sometimes train with Rangers.
Right.
What happened to these other structures? So while we speak of sponsorship, and so I will also bank on what are you doing, what are we doing to attract sponsors to spend their hard-earned cash on us.
Yeah. And then I'm going to ask another question. What do you guys do on match days to attract gate receipts or other ways of generating revenue?
Well, basically the games that are played, as in my club, is not in an enclosed area.
Right.
So that is one. But I just remember from our history, we used to organize buses. So when Northerners play a game in an outer parish or wherever it is,
Mm-hmm.
we were able to organize buses to travel along with the team. But
And
as
who
for-
paid for that?
They paid for themselves. So we had a fan base.
Oh.
And as a matter of fact, along with the team bus, we may have 2 or 3 other buses that would
With the fans.
with fans
Right.
supporting us.
So, Andre, do you guys get that now?
No, I can kind of echo Glen's sentiments. I remember, 30 years ago when I moved back, when Rangers was in full swing. we would play games in the country, and there would be buses of fans coming up. We, as a team, we had our bus, but we also had other buses with supporters that would come up on their own. They
Yeah.
arranged it on their own, and they would come up wherever we went, and they would be supporting us. But like Glenn said, because we don't play in an enclosed ground, Trevor, you and I both know the way it's supposed to be when you're playing at this level.
Yeah.
The pitches should be enclosed, the gate receipts, the refreshments, replicas, all of that stuff. That's all on offer when you're in the right surroundings. In River Road, we still have a decent crowd on a Saturday or a Sunday for a game.
Yeah.
Obviously, depending upon the opponent, the size of the turnout will be directly affected. But we have fans there. We are trying to work on a home. The guys that are now trying to help steer the club, we're trying to have a home erected so that we could, have a storage facility, have some sort of tuck shop there where on game day, and during the week, drinks can be sold. On weekends, maybe we could do a little barbecue
Yeah.
on the side and help generate funds that way,
Yeah.
right? But until, you get a ground that's enclosed, you're not going to be making any gate receipt money. It's going to be a tough sell because the culture is such that, the only time people pay to watch a game is if they're going to watch it in the stadium. And then, of course, you're in a proper seated environment. It's not like you're paying to stand up around a pitch,
Yeah.
which is another issue with encroachment and everything. So it's kind of a slippery slope, but it's definitely ways that the clubs can look to generate additional funds.
But how can we look to improve that? Because I know you want to keep football within your community.
Yeah.
Because, but if you look outside of Grenada, you look in places like Trinidad and Jamaica, and even now in other little islands like St. Lucia and Barbados, they seem to have found a way of how you get football played in enclosed grounds so that the clubs can still earn something to pay their players or to run their club properly.
Agreed. Having played in a bunch of those places, I think they're definitely in front of us. Even a place like Dominica. Dominica has now a 4G pitch. Grenada doesn't have one. St. Lucia has a couple. I think
Barbados has, yeah. Guyana, most of these islands have.
Yeah, and then, so those are all, they used the monies that they got in, and they did something with it. We
Right.
only had talk about something being erected or being built, but nothing's been done.
Right.
If there was one of those facilities that the FA ran, then, you could run triple headers or double headers or something, and
Yeah.
the home team, they would generate the gate receipts for that home game.
Yeah.
Next game comes on, you start at zero, and the people coming in for that game, the home team gets the receipts. So, I mean, there's top leagues. I believe it's Cayman Islands, and even Bermuda. They play their top league in one stadium.
Yeah.
So that again, mind you, it's 4G, so it can take the beating. Can't necessarily do that on a natural grass pitch, but it's time that we get with the program. We being Grenada, and get on board with this sort of facility because it's definitely needed. At least one.
Because we recently just celebrated, I think, 100 years or 101 years?
Yeah.
And these things have been in discussion for many years now. But from ever since I've been living here, I've been hearing about playing in enclosed grounds, but and wanting. So Paradise FC who has won the league umpteen times, and so when they're traveling to play Queens Park Rangers, how many people from that area will come and watch the game in St. George's?
They have, I would say, I mean, I've never actually physically counted, but again, they have a following like Rangers does. So there would be, one or two buses, possibly more, of supporters
Right.
coming to watch them play wherever they play.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, we are the big rival for them over the recent past, but
Yeah.
the way this season's shaping up, there's a lot of parity in the top five. So it bodes itself well for traveling supporter increases to follow the successful clubs around the country.
Yeah. But I'm learning recently that now that they'll be putting in lights in the home ground in Progress Park coming soon.
Well, I don't know if Glenn knows anything about that. I know
Yeah.
that we had our game last weekend postponed because the pitch was underwater, and I know that for a fact that Paradise has been championing the cause to have their home games played in Pearls.
Right.
I know, and that's where our game is now going to be rescheduled to play. We're playing them on the 26th in Pearls.
Oh, by the airport.
Progress Park.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
I mean, Progress Park, Rangers loves playing in Progress Park. It's a nice big pitch. Needs to have lights. It needs to have the pavilion and change room facilities upgraded, because the amount of football that plays in Grenville now, it warrants a proper home for the clubs that are participating and for the fans to be comfortable watching good football.
Yeah. Right. So in a way, in order for football to develop, a lot more infrastructure needs to be put in place.
I think Glenn would agree with me on that. I think most definitely.
What do you think,
It's
Glenn?
way beyond. It's way beyond. There's so many things to be put in place. I just kind of looking back. I know, Andre, you and I were in the same chat, and from year to year is the same kind of complaint in terms of checklists and preparations, and it always, to me, off season one is good, but once the season started, it becomes a little frustrating for players
Yeah.
and management and so forth. And I know that individuals have offered to help
Mm-hmm.
in certain instances, but to me, it's not really, it's not really, and if it does be, if it's been accepted,
Mm-hmm.
it's been seen in a different light. So
Yeah.
in short, I'm saying.
But why is that?
Well, I don't want to say football politics, but I just want to say that it is not right for the football. And one of the things, as was mentioned before, in your intro when you first spoke to Andrew, I think Andrew should know me very well and my passion for the game coming from
Of course.
J.W. Fletcher and the likes. But I just felt too often in wanting to provide opportunity for young people,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like a fight on, even if you're making a genuine suggestion and so. But for me, I've had it in terms of indulging myself with the back and forth where generally expectations just wanted to flip of the coin,
Yeah.
and all should be well, and it's been blown into a mountain. Honestly, as mentioned, yes, I still have the passion for the game, but I try not to put myself
Mhm.
through this, because when you have passion, when you have a passion for something and you realize it's going in another direction, you can become, let's say, disrespectful,
Yeah.
on all the negative lights. So
Yeah.
while it's not the best thing to do at the moment, but I think there are lots to be done to assist and to improve what we have on Ireland at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let me see if I could get Elvis Bristol involved because he's part of the Paradise setup and get his opinion on what he thinks of what we're looking to do. You know, because he writes I think it's every month on on Paradise FC or on football in general in Grenada.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to see if we could get him on the show. But when you're, let's see if I can get him. If not, we'll have to get him on another time to talk about certain things. But are you saying that football in general has lost its passion in Grenada? That is why our national team is, would you say, not doing well? Andre?
I think it's funny you say that because in our training session last night, one of my old teammates from back in the day came by and we were chatting, and that was one of the things that we were talking about. The commitment level of the players nowadays across the board. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I talk to people and they're like, they just don't see players doing the training, the personal training that the guys used to do back in the day. I remember I would see Dollar in Queens Park, with a set of balls, just working and working and working and working. You don't see that nowadays. Guys aren't doing that extra work on their own. They're only really doing it when training is called.
Right.
Yeah, they come to a team session and they train, but to say they're getting up early in the morning before they go to work or before they go to school and go to the park with a couple balls and do something or go and run on the beach or whatever, I'm not seeing that. And I think a lot of people are realizing they're not seeing it themselves either.
So are you
I'm not saying that's the reason why we're 176 or 174 in the world, but I believe it has something to do with it.
Are you so what in a way are you saying the players themselves are not seeing the benefits of it? That's why they're not really interested in giving them their whole to anything?
I mean, Glen could give his take on it too, but I think that the makeup of the players these days is slightly different. So where before we would play regardless of what we were getting, we just wanted to wear the jersey and represent, the club or the village. I think now players, they're expecting stuff.
Right.
And I mean, I think it's in every aspect of society. As a business owner, the quality of worker that I have at my disposal is not what it used to be.
Right.
Right. But yet everybody wants to make, the top dollar for a day work. But, long gone is an honest day's work for an honest day's pay.
Right. What's your take, Glen?
You transition that into sports now, football, as we're talking football, and you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it. I could tell you in our sessions, whenever we want to do physical, we had a schedule set up, and the lowest turnout every week were on the physical days. That's not by fluke. Them guys know what's going on, right?
So how can the FA go about making football more attractive for our young footballers to want to put on that jersey? Or is it because the structures of certain clubs are not right?
Well, I would say knowledge, skills, and attitude of the player. Knowledge in the sense that to know what it takes.
Yeah.
And it comes with the skill. I know we're this is a football program, but I just wanted to make a reference to the cricket,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, the Australian bowler and some of our West Indian bowlers, some of them they are able to bowl 6 balls in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
This didn't come by chance.
No, that's years of practice.
The same thing with the football. In order for you to produce, you have to be consistent. And as Andres alluding to, even physical training. You remember I spoke about Bobo?
Yes, yes.
And how we, if you train, you play, you don't
Mhm.
train, you do not play. And even if everything is placed on the table for our players, um, sometimes you still do not get the fullest compliment. While we know some might be working and otherwise, but generally, very rare one get the fullest complement of
Mhm.
the team out to training. For the game, yes, it's overwhelming, but when it comes to training, so in my view, players are not willing to put out the energy um, for what is needed to be a star.
Right.
And as Andre spoke about, Dala came from Palmer School
Right.
also, and I know what they put out, all the resources, and so you had some Palmer players who came from the Queen's Park School and they played for Rangers and so it's a whole culture in itself in terms of training and putting yourself out to better yourself.
So what makes Paradise Football Club so different?
Consistency in training.
Right. Because their players turn up for training.
Consistency in training. So remember I spoke about knowledge, skill, and attitude.
Yeah.
They come hand in hand.
Right. So how many clubs around the country would have 20 and 30 guys training?
But when you look around,
Two.
go ahead, Andre.
How many, Andre?
2.
I would say two.
Two.
Yes.
The two that we're talking about, Rangers and Paradise.
Yes.
Glenn alluded to before, I do have players from other clubs just show up. I'll sit down and I'll watch a session and I'll be, who's this guy? He just show up in the session.
Yes.
So I go and I pull him out of the session. I'm like, can I help you? And, the staff, Bubs and, Corey and Hammers for the most part, depending on where we are in the season,
Yeah.
we never turn away a player. Even if if they can't handle the level that we're at, they see it for themselves and, they may step aside. But unless we're training for a final, we're not going to tell somebody that they can't train with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've come to Queen's Park, found their way to Queen's Park because they want to train.
Yeah.
And where they're from, there's nothing available.
Wow.
Or it's not structured. Ours has, it's not to the level of structure and commitment that I'm used to and that I would like to see.
Mm.
But I know it's, a million times better than the majority.
Right.
We have, most nights we have over 15, 18 players in training.
Yeah.
And we encourage our younger players to come so that they can, learn the system, and they're going to be progressing up the chain so that it's not a big transition for them when they get there. They know the system we're playing, the way, the style of play. It'll be automatic for them.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it does make a difference. But,
Oh, brilliant.
Glenn hit it there. It's hard. These guys are just not committed. I was going to say, well, maybe if they had, better facilities around the place, and there is money involved. I think maybe if you made it more encouraging in the first and second division, that might encourage the smaller sides to become more organized. But $100,000 for the Premier League, that's not chump change.
Mm.
It's a decent set of money, and that's without a sponsor. Could you imagine if they were just able to do what a club like ours did and get a title sponsor?
Yeah.
How much you could be playing for?
Yeah. Makes a big difference.
Those things would change a
Yeah. And how do you think they can go about doing that? Getting a title sponsor.
Well, I think, again, Glenn would agree with me on this one. That there's been a lot of damage done to the reputation of over the years, at least my 30-something years I've been back. I've seen it myself, the damage to the game, to the FA brand, for lack of a better term. You know, a lot of corporate Grenada was probably gun shy and still is gun shy to get involved.
Yes.
There's a lot of there's a lot of skeletons along the road, you know. But you know, if you as a club can get the culture around your club and your community correct and get the players to buy in, there's hope, because you know people want to be associated with success and a winner.
Yeah, yeah. I realize that in my time of being here. You know, but thank you so much, Andre, for your contribution, and hopefully we can tap on it again come the next show or the show after on your availability. Right now we're going to take a little break and then come back to the show. Thank you, Glen. Well, let's come back to the second segment of the Grenada's Total Football Show. And what we have this time, I hope I can get hold of him, is visiting Carriacou at the moment from the UK. His name is Wayne Simon. So let me see if I can get Wayne online to discuss what he does in football in the UK. I don't want to spill the beans for him, but hopefully he would answer and we could understand what he actually's involvement is within football in the UK. Good day, Wayne. How are you doing, Mr. Simon?
Well, how you doing?
All is good. Welcome to the Total Football Show.
Thank you.
And we're here in the midst of a gentleman that's been around football in Grenada for a good while. His name is Glen Alexander, so you can say hello to each other.
Nice to meet you, Glenn.
Nice to meet you. Is it
Wayne, yeah.
Wayne, yes.
Yeah. So we've been talking all about football in Grenada, Wayne, and your involvement in football in the UK and how you were looking to get involved with football in Grenada to take it to the next level. So if you could explain to me what your actual role and what you actually do within football in the UK that you were looking to contribute to Grenada football.
Okay, so I have two roles in football in the UK. I run Lewisham Borough Community Youth Football Club, which runs teams from under 7s right up to under 16s in various leagues. And I'm also a lead scout with a Premier League club, which I won't name.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I carry out at least 4 training sessions a week, and we've got leagues running. We play in 2 leagues, and I'm also responsible for any players that are scouted. We've got about 50, 60 scouts in London.
Wow.
Any players that are scouted, we have a system where the players' details are put on a network that we use, and I run what we call showcase games. We invite various teams in every week, and they play against the players who we've selected to be part of that squad. And if they impress in those games, they then go on to a full trial.
Right. So I've got Glen here with me, and how many showcase games do we do of our young talent in Grenada?
Well, I could
For scouts to actually come, or for us to record and send to scouts around the different parts of Europe and beyond.
It's between 0 and 1.
Did you hear that, Wade?
I heard that.
So it's something that you could actually help us with.
Yes.
If you use the model that I use, it's important to have some type of pathway for players to get into the Grenada national team. But in order for that to happen, you have to have a decent youth structure where you've got coaches who are implementing the right technical aspects, physical aspects, and psychological aspects from a very young age.
And how young would you say?
Well, at the club that I work in, they have players from the age of 6 and 7.
Right.
Obviously, in the UK, but I don't know whether this pertains to the whole world, but in the UK, you can't sign a player to a club until they are an under 9. So prior to that, what a lot of the clubs do is they invite players in to train with them with the view of sort of smoothing up the parents and getting them on side.
Yeah.
And then when they come of age, hopefully they're at the front of the queue for the parent signature.
Right. So are these things that we should be looking to do within our club systems in Grenada?
I think so, because I think
Because they've got difficulty of attracting players.
but,
Hey,
I
Glen.
think it starts from the youth. If you set up a youth system whereby the youth are being coached, the coaching is key.
Yeah.
Because it's all well and good having a system set up. If you haven't got coaches that are able to implement the correct technical aspects of a young player, passing correctly, receiving correctly, body shape, striking the ball correctly, running off the ball, those sort of things, and you increase the degree of difficulty and the expectation of game understanding as they get older,
Yeah.
you then have a bigger gene pool to choose from.
Right. So you got, say, for instance, Glen is involved with a team in Grenada in Division 1, and they're called Combined Northerners.
Okay.
I'm going to ask Glen, what do your club do to attract young players
Well,
within your grassroots?
well, as you know, in the Northeast there are 4 schools.
Yeah.
You have secondary and primary schools, so it is a move whereby we try to get them from the school.
Right.
Because the school is an organized structure, as well as we have not muster up the manpower to go around to the different villages. But we believe that at that age that we're looking at, they are within a structure. So the best is to contact the school to get that kind of contact from there. And also we ask players to assist in identifying players.
Right. Did you hear that, Wayne?
I heard that. I don't know too much about the football system over here.
Yeah.
But can I ask, do you have any sort of youth leagues?
Well, in terms of youth league, in my view, and I stand corrected, yes, the FA, and I use, I'll careful my words to say, try to organize, and in some cases, it is more counter than pro for the players, because if proper structures is not being made available for especially youthful players, then obviously all the likes of knowledge, skills, and attitude will be affected.
Right. So where does a kid age 6 and 7 and 8 go to play football?
It's really, that's my take.
Yeah.
Right. So you will find that maybe in a football school, as in Smith's.
Yeah.
And
But how often
very
would they be
few-
playing?
Very few. When they're babysitting. When they're
Right, right. Did you hear that, Wayne?
I didn't hear the last bit. I heard.
I said when they are being babysitted. So in other words, the parents may drop them off on the Saturday to and in some cases they may not be with them.
Right.
Right.
So we need to improve seriously on what we're doing.
If you follow the UK structure at the moment,
Yeah.
they start organised football when you're in the year that you turn 7.
Yeah.
So under 7s and under 8s
Yeah.
play 5v5.
Yeah.
And the idea being that because there's less players on the pitch,
Yes.
you get more touches of the football and therefore improve that way.
Great.
They're
What-
about to bring it down to 3v3s.
Yeah.
I think either next year or the year after. I don't know which one.
It is part of a tournament that I do every year.
Right, okay. 9s and 10s play 7-a-side on slightly bigger pitches.
Hmm.
And then 11s and 12s play 9-a-side.
Yeah.
They don't play 11-a-side until they're 13.
Right. But it's
There are
a
various leagues that are organised for that.
yeah. It's a conversation that's worth continuing. You know, because the show thus far we overran on certain things. So hopefully in the coming future, or maybe the next show that we look to present, that you can now continue with your insight of the development of youth football in Grenada and the way we should be setting the path of how we should be structuring,
Sure.
you know. But thank you again for your contribution.
You're more than
And thank you, Glen, for coming in on the show today, which was long overdue.
Yes.
It's a long time that we've actually sat in front of each other to literally discuss football. But thank you so much for having here on the Total Football Show. And to Andre Patterson of Queen's Park Rangers for being involved in the show this week for the first time in a long time that we've been able to actually produce the show because of what happened a year and a few days ago with Hurricane Beryl coming through and causing such a destruction to the island. Hopefully on the next show we will be able to get you back and along with another guest and get more audience participation within the Total Football Show. But thank you so much for the first one of the year. Thank you so much. You take care. Right. Thank you.